I have for you one of the most delightful clips I've seen in a really long time. You don't hear me start segments with that too often, and it has to do with Trump's disqualification from the ballot in the state of Maine. Of course, the Maine Secretary of State has sided with the argument that Trump is disqualified from the ballot due to Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which bars individuals from running for office if, while previously in office, they engaged in insurrection or provided aid or comfort to insurrectionists, which Trump did in the lead up to and on January 6th. And CNN brought on a man by the name of Joel Stetkis, I think it is, the chair of the Maine Republican Party, to respond to this news. And what you're about to see is truly hilarious. By just repeatedly asking the question, essentially, why is it wrong to remove him from the ballot? A very basic question. And then not moving on from that question, the CNN host is able to casually, calmly, but at the same time ruthlessly dismantle Joel's argument against the decision. And I'm going to play this and react as we're going along. Watch the way that Joel Stetkis just implodes as he's pressed on this.
The way we could put this really is, we've got an unelected bureaucrat who likes to pretend that she's a lawyer, and she's literally taking away the voters' choices in Maine. Here in Maine and across the country, regardless of, whether they like Donald Trump or not, Bellows is wrong on so many levels, and it's getting to the point of really being embarrassing.
Okay, so typical pro-Trump response, right? All the CNN host is going to do essentially is say, why is it terrible?
But if the state law, like the state constitution, makes it so that if someone has a complaint about a candidate, they take it up with the Secretary of State, who then is the arbiter, how could she be in the wrong for making a decision based on what was presented to her in that hearing?
Well, her decision process was just wrong.
Whoa, that's powerful. Why is it wrong? Well, because her decision was wrong. Let's watch more.
She's there to support Maine's Maine voting rights, and she's doing exactly the opposite. We're going to fight this thing to the highest extent that we need to, and what she's doing is just flat out wrong.
Why would you say that? Do you object to Donald Trump's participation on January 6th? Do you think that Article 5 of the 14th Amendment, or rather Article 3 of the 14th Amendment, doesn't include the presidency? Like, what's your main argument against her decision?
I'm going to stop it again. It's such a basic question. We're not arguing should voters have it. We're talking about the Constitution. Does Section 3 of the 14th Amendment apply to Trump's actions leading up to and on January 6th? If they do, constitutionally, you have to take them off the ballot. Maine Secretary of State is saying they do. They seem to, obviously, and thus he shouldn't be on the ballot. Just like if somebody tried to run for an office when they were too young, right? For president, if you aren't 35, you just can't run for that office. It's in the Constitution, and the Maine Secretary of State would uphold that as well. It's really that simple. Continuing on.
Well, this has so much more to do with the suppression of the vote as opposed to Donald Trump. We would oppose this decision regardless of what Republican she decided that she was going to arbitrarily decide Maine voters aren't going to be allowed to vote.
Joel, you're saying that it's arbitrary, but what is it about her decision? What is it about her argument legally that you're opposed to?
We're just opposed to her taking away the rights of the voters to be able to choose the leader that they want to vote for or not.
But if there's a part of the Constitution that says that if someone is an insurrectionist, a state can intervene to remove them from a ballot, and she is designated to make that decision according to Maine's state constitution, then isn't it up to her?
Her reasoning behind her decision is completely wrong.
I'll play a little bit more, but what are you doing? Joel, get yourself together. If you're gonna be this dishonest, have an argument at least. Give us the respect of doing a little prep before your dishonesty on TV, Joel. My goodness. All you have is, well, it's wrong. Well, why is it wrong? Because she's taking away the say of the voters. Well, in our system, you have to uphold the Constitution, which is what we're debating here. Does this part of it apply to what Trump did? And are you saying that it doesn't apply? Are you saying Trump didn't do the things that we're deeming him to have done? What's your argument as to why it's wrong based on the arguments that are being made, based on which arguments the Maine Secretary of State sided with? What's your actual argument as to why this is wrong? Well, because I just think the decision's wrong, frankly. Joel, a little more.
So what is the reasoning that you object to?
No matter how you ask the question, her decision is completely wrong.
Joel, but give us the details. Why is it wrong? Why is it wrong?
So Boris, this is the thing, right? There are attorneys and judges, Democrats and Republicans across this country that have said that she's wrong.
So he falls back on, it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it's wrong. Why is it wrong? Because it's wrong. And then figures out a really powerful argument. Why is it wrong? Because other people think it's wrong. Whew. That's brutal. Embarrassing and brutal. And it reminds me of many MAGA Republicans' reaction to Trump's indictments. I talk about this a lot. Take note of this as you're sort of watching people in right-wing media respond to Trump's indictments, and as they say it's all wrong, so infrequently will they lay out specifically how the allegations are either unsubstantiated or don't violate the law. It always stays super vague. Oh, it's politically motivated, but why? Oh, because they're targeting him, but what about the allegations? Or Trump did nothing wrong, or it's all bogus. It's so zoomed out. But as someone who has to watch a lot more than I like to of right-wing media in preparation for the show, I so rarely see anyone actually walk through, in right-wing media specifically, each indictment and say, oh, this part isn't actually a violation of the law, or this part, I don't think there's evidence to substantiate it. If he did that, that would be against the law, but he didn't do it. Or he did the thing, but it's not against the law. It just doesn't happen because they can't engage with that debate. Because if you do go through the allegations against Trump and the evidence being brought forward, you realize these charges are strong and justified. And same thing on Joel's response in that clip. Why do you want me to explain why it's wrong? Ugh, so aggravating. What a burden. And by the way, the lack of understanding about the Constitution is on full display within the context of this disqualification conversation, even among Trump's own lawyers. Here's Christina Bobb.
Look, here's the thing. I would not be surprised if Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, whichever, if she was 8-1. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised by that because of the radical nature of her position on the court and some other decisions that she's talking about. But I agree with you. It should be 9-0. Look, this is a political question. America's always deferred about, the court should say, it's not a question for the court, it's a question for the voters. That is the tradition of this country, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And as you mentioned in your monologue, the Colorado Republican Party has already filed their brief with the Supreme Court, and they say just that. It's actually a very solid brief. They raise a handful of arguments as to why this Section 3 of the 14th Amendment doesn't even apply to the president. It's not self-executing. Donald Trump hasn't been charged with insurrection. And this is a question for the voters. The reason why it doesn't apply to the president was because the drafters of the 14th Amendment realized that the president is elected by the entire nation, and it should be the entire nation who determines who they want for president, whether they're guilty of insurrection or not. It's up to the people.
So at the end there, she says, guilty of insurrection or not, Trump should be on the ballot. Quote, guilty of insurrection or not. So she's actively advocating for us to ignore a part of the Constitution. And by the way, in case people don't understand, this is what it means to live in a constitutional system. Yes, the people decide, but you have to be a certain age, as I said previously, so people can't decide on that according to the Constitution. And in this case, you can't have engaged in insurrection. People can't decide on that. But Trump's lawyer is saying, even if he did do it, ignore the Constitution. Let him run. Ridiculous. Make sure to become a member at lukebeasleyshow.com/membership, and make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel.